Pause for a moment and look at your life, not with judgment, not with frustration, but with understanding. Everything you see right now, your circumstances, your challenges, your delays, is not happening to you. It is happening from you. The world you are experiencing is not a verdict on your worth. It is simply the echo of past assumptions returning for recognition. Most people are trapped because they let reality speak louder than their inner decision. They wait for permission from circumstances before they believe, feel, or move forward. But the greatest mistake you can make is assuming that what you see now is final. It is not. Reality is flexible. Circumstances are negotiable. And the moment you stop reacting and start assuming, everything begins to change. You do not rise by fighting the world. You rise by refusing to be defined by it. Today you are going to learn why ignoring your reality is not escapism, but power. Why assumption is not imagination, but law. And why the life you desire does not arrive through effort, but through inner agreement. This is the moment you stop asking, will it happen? And start knowing it is already done. What you are seeing in your life right now is not the present moment speaking. It is the past returning. Circumstances do not appear instantly. They take shape slowly, quietly, and inevitably from states you once occupied without realizing. This is why reacting to your current reality is always late. By the time something becomes visible, the inner decision that created it has already been made. Understanding this alone begins to dissolve fear, because it shows you that nothing happening now has power over what happens next. Most people live as if the world is leading them. They look at their bank account, their relationships, their body, or their opportunities and say, "This is who I am." But that conclusion is backwards. The world is not a judge. It is a mirror. It reflects identity, not effort. When you change how you see yourself inwardly, the reflection must adjust, just not always immediately. And it is in that delay where most people give up, thinking nothing is happening, when in fact everything is rearranging. The mirror never argues with you. It simply shows you what you have been assuming to be true about yourself. If you have assumed struggle, it reflects resistance. If you have assumed lack, it reflects limitation. And if you have assumed being overlooked, it reflects invisibility. The mirror is honest, but it is never final. What you see today is not destiny. It is evidence of how powerful assumption really is. This is why ignoring reality is essential in transformation. If you react emotionally to what you see, you reinforce the very state that produced it. Attention is agreement. Emotion is permission. The moment you panic, complain, or feel defeated by appearances, you are silently declaring, "This is still who I am." And the mirror obeys, faithfully reproducing the same image again and again. Instead, the wise withdraw belief from appearance. They let the unwanted condition exist without internal identification. They stop narrating it. They stop explaining it. They stop asking how long it will last. They understand that a reflection fades only when the inner image changes, not when the outer surface is attacked. This requires maturity, because the senses demand loyalty. They beg you to accept what you see as truth, but the inner law responds only to self-concept. When you decide inwardly, "This is no longer me," and remain there without argument, the mirror must eventually comply. There is no exception. The delay is not punishment. It is adjustment. Many people sabotage themselves in this phase by checking for results. They look around constantly to see if life has changed yet. But the moment you check with urgency, You return to the old identity of wait. You shift from being to seeking, and seeking implies absence. The mirror reflects that too. True assumption is quiet. It does not watch the clock. It does not measure progress. It does not need reassurance. It knows that once a state is accepted inwardly, it is already fact, whether the senses confirm it yet or not. Think of how naturally your reflection changes when you move. You do not argue with the mirror or ask it to hurry. You trust the law. In the same way, when you change your inner posture, how you feel about yourself, what you expect as normal, what you silently accept as true, life adjusts automatically. The delay exists for one reason only: to test your loyalty to the new state. Not because life is cruel, but because identity must stabilize before expression can crystallize. The moment you remain calm in the absence of proof, you demonstrate mastery. You declare without words, "I know who I am now." And this is where power is born. When you stop reacting to reflections and start choosing identity, you step out of victimhood and into authorship. You realize the world has never been against you. It has been agreeing with you all along. So let the mirror show whatever it shows for now. Do not fear it. Do not worship it. Simply change who you are being when no one is watching. Assume the new self quietly. Live from it inwardly. And trust this law completely. The mirror must change, because you already have. Nothing in your life begins on the outside. Every event, every opportunity, every encounter is born first as an inner acceptance. Before something becomes a fact in the world, it is first agreed upon within you. This is why effort alone has never created lasting change. You can force action, but you cannot force reality. Reality responds only to what you consistently assume to be true about yourself. Most people misunderstand assumption. They believe it is wishful thinking or pretending. But assumption is not imagination used once. It is imagination lived from. It is the quiet decision to occupy a state inwardly and remain there without waiting for evidence. The moment you assume, you stop asking life for permission. You move internally as someone for whom the outcome is already settled. Facts are not stubborn. They are loyal. They obey the dominant inner state. What you call reality is simply assumption that has hardened through repetition and emotional acceptance. When something appears fixed or unchangeable, it is not because it has power. It is because belief has been feeding it for a long time. The good news is that the same process that created limitation is the process that dissolves it. The world does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you expect. Desire says, "I don't have." Assumption says, "This is mine." And expectation is far more powerful than hope. Hope keeps you looking forward. Assumption anchors you in now. And the present moment is the only place creation happens. This is why affirmations fail for many people. They repeat words while secretly checking their life for confirmation. Their inner posture is still waiting. But assumption is not repetition. It is embodiment. It is the feeling of naturalness. When something feels normal to you, life accepts it as instruction. Notice how easily you assume things that already feel true. You do not affirm your name every morning. You do not convince yourself of your past. Those assumptions are stable, effortless, unquestioned, and they manifest flawlessly. The goal is not to force belief, but to gently move the desired state into that same category of normal. At first, the assumption may feel unfamiliar. That is natural. New states always feel unnatural until they are occupied consistently. The mistake is abandoning the assumption because it feels strange. Growth always feels strange before it feels natural. If you persist calmly, the unfamiliar becomes familiar, and the mirror of life follows. The moment assumption becomes fact inwardly, it must become fact outwardly. The delay is not uncertainty. It is translation. Life must rearrange people, timing and conditions to match your inner claim. But the claim must be clear. If you assume today and doubt tomorrow, you send mixed instructions. Reality reflects confusion with delay. This is why inner discipline matters more than outer action. You are not asked to control the world, only yourself. When you choose a state and return to it again and again, despite appearances, you impress it upon consciousness. And consciousness has no choice but to externalize what it accepts. Assumption creates fact because life has no creative power of its own. It borrows it waits for your instruction. And the moment you stop treating the desired outcome as distant and start treating it as done, the law activates. Do not ask when. Do not ask how. Assume and let fact catch up. Ignoring your reality does not mean fighting it. It does not mean pretending it does not exist or forcing yourself to feel positive when you do not. True ignorance of circumstance is calm, intelligent, and deliberate. It is the ability to see what is happening without allowing it to define who you are. Resistance gives reality power. Neutrality takes that power away. Most people believe that reacting is necessary. They think worry is responsibility. Anxiety is preparation, and emotional struggle is proof that they care. But reaction is agreement. The moment you emotionally wrestle with a situation, you fuse your identity to it. You tell life, this matters more than my inner state. And life listens. Ignoring without resistance means allowing appearances to be present while withdrawing belief from them. You do not deny the situation. You deny its authority. You refuse to let it decide your self-concept. This is the difference between suppression and mastery. Suppression fights. Mastery observes and moves inward. When something unwanted appears, the natural impulse is to fix it, explain it, or fear it. But all three keep your attention locked on the problem. Attention is energy, and whatever you energize persists. The wise understand that reality dissolves, not through force but through lack of emotional nourishment. This is why inner composure is so powerful. When you remain calm in the face of contradiction, you are silently declaring that the circumstance has no creative authority. You are no longer asking, what is happening to me? You are stating, this does not define me. And the world must eventually reflect that detachment. Ignoring reality also means ending the habit of storytelling. Most suffering comes not from events, but from the narrative built around them. Repeating the story internally or externally cements it. Each time you retell it, you give it continuity. When you stop telling the story, the situation begins to lose momentum. This does not require willpower. It requires awareness. The moment you catch yourself reacting, gently return to the inner assumption you have chosen. Not with anger, not with frustration, but with familiarity. You are not trying to escape the moment, you are relocating your identity. The greatest test of this principle comes when reality becomes loud. When circumstances contradict your assumptions strongly, the temptation is to abandon the inner state for common sense. But common sense is built on past assumptions. If you want a new outcome, you must be willing to appear unreasonable to the old logic. Ignoring without resistance is an act of trust. It says, I do not need to fix this with effort. I only need to remain faithful to who I have decided to be. And that faith must be internal, not emotional. Calm is the signal that assumption is stable. Over time, this practice creates emotional authority. You stop being shaken by appearances. You stop rising and falling with conditions. You develop an inner stillness that no external event can penetrate. And from that stillness, reality reshapes itself. Remember this. Shadows disappear when you stop chasing them. They vanish when the light source changes. Your inner state is the light. When you shift it, the shadow has nowhere to exist. So let reality speak if it must. Listen without reaction, see without belief, and return again and again to the inner knowing that what you have assumed is already settled. That is not avoidance. That is power. Persistence is often misunderstood as effort, repetition, or force. But true persistence has nothing to do with strain. It is not about trying harder. It is about remaining faithful to an inner decision, even when nothing outside seems to agree. Persistence is not something you do, it is something you refuse to stop being. Most people begin with excitement. They assume a new state for a moment, feel inspired, and then immediately look to the world for confirmation. When reality does not change quickly, doubt creeps in. They assume again, then doubt again. This inner inconsistency is not punished. It is simply reflected as delay. Life cannot move decisively when the instruction keeps changing. Inner loyalty means choosing a state and returning to it again and again as home. Not obsessively, not anxiously, but naturally, just as you return to your name or your identity without effort. You return to the assumption that defines your desired life. This return is persistence. The mind will test you. It will present memories, logic, and evidence to pull you back into the old self. This is not failure. It is transition. Old states fight for survival because they have been fed for years. The moment you stop reacting to these mental invitations, they lose strength. You do not argue with doubt. You outgrow it. Persistence also means forgiving yourself quickly. Many people abandon their assumption because they think one negative thought has ruined everything. But creation is not fragile. It responds to dominance, not perfection. What matters is where you live inwardly, not where you visit briefly. Return without self-judgment, and the state remains intact. There will be moments when assumption feels dull, empty, or unreal. This is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that the state is becoming natural. Emotional intensity fades as identity stabilizes. When something becomes normal, it no longer excites the senses. And that is exactly when it is most powerful. The world tests persistence by offering partial results or near misses. These are not failures. They are indicators that the inner shift is taking hold. The danger is reacting to them emotionally, celebrating too early or becoming discouraged too quickly. Emotional dependence on outcomes weakens persistence. Calm certainty strengthens it. To persist is to stop asking, "Am I doing this right?" and start living as someone for whom the decision is final. You do not monitor your assumption, you trust it. You do not keep score. You remain present, and you do not chase results. You allow them. Persistence is not passive. It is deeply active internally. It is the quiet discipline of returning to the chosen self, even when distractions appear. It is saying, "This is who I am now," without needing to prove it. Over time, persistence creates inevitability. The inner state becomes so familiar that abandoning it feels unnatural. And when that happens, reality has no choice but to align. The shift becomes irreversible, not because you forced the world, but because you stabilized identity. Understand this clearly. Life does not reward intensity. It rewards consistency of being. The one who remains loyal inwardly always outlasts the circumstances. So persist, not with tension, but with trust. Not with effort, but with identity. Not with urgency, but with calm authority. Because what you stay faithful to internally must eventually stand before you externally. Everything you are trying to get is already waiting for you to be the version of yourself that naturally has it. Life does not respond to desire. It responds to identity. The moment you understand this, struggle begins to dissolve. You stop chasing outcomes and start aligning with a state, and outcomes follow effortlessly. Most people live in reverse. They believe that once something happens, they will finally feel confident, secure, or fulfilled. They wait for success to feel worthy, for money to feel safe, for love to feel whole. But this logic keeps life permanently delayed. The outer world can only reflect who you are now, not who you promise to become later. Being precedes having, because the world mirrors self-concept. What feels natural to you determines what shows up consistently. If abundance feels unusual, it appears briefly or not at all. If respect feels unfamiliar, it must be earned again and again. But when a state becomes normal internally, life treats it as standard and arranges accordingly. This is why pretending does not work, but embodying does. You cannot fake identity. You must live from it inwardly. The question is never, "How do I get this?" The real question is, "Who would I be if this were already true?" And then, without effort, you begin to think, feel, choose, and react from that answer. Being does not mean acting differently on the outside. It means shifting your inner posture. The tone of your self-talk changes. Your expectations soften. Your reactions slow. You stop scanning life for proof because proof is no longer required. You are no longer preparing for the future. You are residing in completion. When you live from being, urgency disappears. Desperation cannot coexist with fulfillment. The absence of tension is the clearest sign that identity has shifted. And that calm is not indifference. It is certainty, the kind of certainty that does not announce itself. Life responds quickly to this state because it is clear. Confusion delays manifestation, not time. When your inner world sends a stable signal, the outer world reflects it cleanly. You no longer experience constant ups and downs because you are not emotionally dependent on outcomes. This principle also explains why some people seem like they are not trying to become successful. They expect success as normal. They are not hoping to be chosen. They assume inclusion, and life treats assumptions as instructions, not wishes. Being also requires letting go of the old identity without mourning it. You do not argue with who you were, you simply outgrow it. Each time you choose the new self over the familiar reaction, you weaken the old state. Over time, the old identity feels foreign, and the new one feels obvious. The moment you stop asking, when will it happen, and start living as though it already has, you cross the threshold. You stop waiting for permission. You stop preparing. You arrive. And arrival is powerful. Remember this always. You are not here to earn life. You are here to express it. Decide who you are. Remain there. Let the world reorganize itself around that decision. Because once being is established, having is inevitable. Now understand this clearly. Your world has no choice but to obey the state you consistently occupy. It may delay, it may test you, it may show you the opposite for a time, but it cannot win against a settled assumption. The mistake is not doubting once. The mistake is returning to doubt as a home. When you assume, you are not pretending. You are selecting a version of yourself, and life rearranges around that selection. You do not need to convince anyone. You do not need to explain anything. You only need to remain loyal to the inner truth you have chosen. Let the old reality fade without drama. Let it dissolve without resistance. Do not argue with shadows. They disappear when you stop feeding them light. Persist calmly. Assume boldly. Rest inwardly, and one day soon, without force, without struggle, without effort, you will look around and realize the world has caught up to who you decided to be. Thank you for giving yourself this moment. Thank you for choosing awareness over reaction. And most importantly, thank you for remembering the power that has always been within you. Carry this knowing with you. Live from the assumption, and let life prove what you already know to be true.